And Mark, before we get into our last topic, going to throw out the last bit of little thing I throw out at the beginning of each segment. Check out mostvaluablepodcast.com for everything MVP related. Mostvaluablepodcast.com. And Mark, let's look at our last segment, diving into the NFL draft. And the reason why I put this one last was because with how things should be scheduled yesterday, the Primetime Podcast should have had a segment of, will Dwayne Haskins go number one in the NFL draft? And we're not going to necessarily hit the trade of the Cardinals. We're going to save that for our mock draft next week. But with that being a possibility, with teams being able to maybe trade up to number one to take Dwayne Haskins, with him being the number one quarterback on the board for mostly everybody in this draft class, we're going to look at some teams that we think are the best fits for Dwayne Haskins. So I'm going to let you start. What is one team that you're thinking about would be an absolute fit for Dwayne Haskins if they went ahead and drafted him this year?
For me, I look at the team that I think would be the best fit, and that's actually going to be the New York Giants, which is great because if nobody trades, they're the first team that gets a shot at him. The reason I say that really is because Saquon Barkley's there. You've got a amazing running back who's going to make your life a lot easier. And Dwayne Haskins, he's the kind of guy who likes to move around a little bit too, so that makes it easier for him to do so. You've got a little Odell Beckham Jr. out there, not a bad wide receiver. You've got a lot of talent offensively to help you out, and the defense isn't bad. The defense is going to be just fine. This is a team that, unfortunately, they started winning some games because that pushed them back in the draft order. But the team you see at the end of the season for the football Giants is a better team than this 5-11 record makes it seem like they are. Dwayne Haskins would be an easy plug and play, but if you don't want to plug and play him, he's got Eli Manning, who has years and 2 Super Bowls of experience. Not a bad guy to learn behind for a little bit.
And that's the thing that I want to mention is, so I was watching First Things First today on FS1, and they had Joel Klatt on. He was talking about the national championship game in college. And they asked him about Dwayne Haskins and what kind of team does he fit with. And Joel Klatt said that for him, he thinks Dwayne Haskins fits with a team that has somebody that he can sit behind. And for me, personally, I'm going to dive into the film before I give my opinion on that, whether he should sit behind someone or if he's ready to come out right away. But I will say this, the 2 teams that probably need a quarterback day one, the Redskins and the Jaguars, they're not fits in my mind for Dwayne Haskins, because the Redskins are a team where they really don't have, to me, the weapons around Dwayne Haskins to make it successful. Like, the reason why, for me, the Redskins won games this year is because before he got injured, Alex Smith was doing everything he could to win those games. He's a good quarterback. The Jaguars, they're going to be a team that's going to be expected to compete, and the pressure is going to be on. They need a Joe Flacco. They need a Nick Foles, a veteran guy to come in.
I still think Dwayne Haskins would do just fine in Jacksonville.
You think so?
He's got Leonard Fournette. They need better wide receivers. There's no doubt about that. But they've got an amazing defense that's going to bail him out if he makes rookie mistakes.
Yeah, and I mean, I just wonder if that's a team that, with me, because of the pressure that's going to be there, how would a rookie handle that pressure? But at the same time, we've seen Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson this year.
The Jaguars did just go 5-11. I think the pressure has gone down a little bit.
But for me, the one team I'm going to throw out there, and this depends on who they hire, because they still haven't hired a head coach. I'm going to say the Denver Broncos. And the reason why I am going to say the Denver Broncos is because, A, I like the pieces that they've started to build in Denver. A guy that you said on our podcast last week would have been your offensive rookie of the year this year in Phillip Lindsay.
Love that kid.
They also have Royce Freeman, so 2 young running backs. You've got Deshaun Hamilton and Cortland Sutton, your 2 main wide receivers that you're hoping for the future that you can go ahead and build on. You've got to, I'm going to throw out, I believe he's a former Fighting Illini, and he is Matt Lacoste at tight end that didn't do terrible for them this year. And you look at it, and he doesn't have to start year one for Denver. Case Keenum is there for another year. So he could sit a year, get acclimated to the NFL, fix what he needs to fix, and then start in 2020. My only caveat was that is, let's say they hire a Vic Fangio. My question then becomes, who's going to be the OC? That would be the thing I look at and why it won't be the perfect fit, but I don't think it would be a bad fit for him in Denver.
Do you actually believe, though, that next year, if you have a Dwayne Haskins, that Case Keenum will actually start all 16 games?
Yes, I do.
Don't. Not in the slightest.
I mean, maybe, okay, if it, with me, unless, like, and of course things can change throughout the season, what I would say is if he does start, it's a Patrick Mahomes situation of like, all right, you'll play week 17.
No, not because there's a difference between Alex Smith as a quarterback than Case Keenum, a guy who quarterback rating of 47.9, 81 for, 81.2 for his quarterback rating. His QBR was a 47. Threw almost as many interceptions as touchdowns.
But put him with the right OC and look at the year before. I know that, like, we're looking at that Viking year as like flash in a bottle, but you put him in the right situation, and he's not
I don't think
terrible.
you're going to get the right situation in Denver, though.
Denver hasn't proved that they can make anything work with a quarterback.
If we had the same season as last year, they won their first 2 games and went on a 4-game losing streak, Dwayne Haskins is in. I mean, they're not going to let that happen, especially when you draft him that early, especially when you have the added pressure for John Elway of Paxton Lynch. Never even had a chance.
Paxton's done. Like,
but I know that's not my point. My point is you drafted a guy early in the first round, and he never plays. You can't then draft Dwayne Haskins and say, but Case Keenum is our starter. The people would riot.
I think that you could, like, if there's
not if you start losing games.
If there's a legit reason, you can have it be 1 year. The thing with Paxton Lynch was after that first year, it was like, all right, is he ever going to be ready to take over? Is he ever going to? Because every time it's like we would get a glimpse, it's like, wow, he's not ready for this.
Yeah.
And I don't think you would get that with Dwayne Haskins.
I
don't think
agree
Dwayne
that
Haskins,
you probably shouldn't get that with him. I just think that Case Keenum is not Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
You know, he's not a guy who's going to make you say, there's no way we could possibly let the rookie start. Not when you start losing games. If you're a 6-10 team again, Dwayne Haskins was playing.
I could say is a fair point, but I would hope that maybe, like, if they hire Vic Fangio, Fangio brings in an OC that's going to bring the best out of Case Keenum, unless he's drafting.
I don't know. All these offensive coordinators getting head coaching jobs.
Unless he's drafting, Dwayne Haskins to be the guy right away. But, like, for me, because the thing is, there's only there's 2 teams for me. The Giants are probably the best one. The question is he going to get to 6? Is that the problem? Or are they going to have to trade up to get him? Another team that I think could be interesting if we're going with the whole sit behind him theme, Miami. Because that's one where Ryan Tannehill, with a new coach coming in, is Ryan Tannehill, if they take Dwayne Haskins this year, will he then be the guy where it's like, all right, we've got our guy in waiting. Once Dwayne Haskins is ready this year or next year, Tannehill is done.
It's possible. But that's another one where, depending on that new coach in Miami, it's a big question mark on if they want Tannehill to really be there or not. Plus, Tannehill can't be healthy. So Dwayne Haskins is going to get in there sooner rather than later. I think the Miami Dolphins would be a bad fit if you want him to sit, because you know he's not going to sit. Unfortunately, the team, the dream team for potentially sitting and then coming back and actually starting soon, the Saints don't have a first-round pick. And even if they did, it'd be like 30, 31, or 32. So you're not going to have that possibility either.
Right now, they're projected at 32 because they're the favorite to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so good job, Packers. You'd get the 32nd overall pick, and you didn't even make the playoffs. But that's another team there with the Packers, too. I mean, that's a good situation, but he'd probably be sitting for 3 years. But there's a spot where you'll get to sit and learn, that's for sure.
What about Tampa Bay? That's one that I threw out to Brandon on the PTP. Brandon wasn't for it, but because he thinks that Arians likes Jameis Winston and that Winston will be there longer than next year.
Well, I think that there's an assumption that Arians went to Tampa Bay for a reason, and he knows who the quarterback is there. So he's got to be a guy who assumes he's going to get something out of Jameis Winston. So I agree with Brandon on that case that I think that Bruce Arians going to Tampa Bay is proof that he thinks he can work with Winston. But even if let's say he didn't and he drafted him, that's just a big mess. To have Jameis Winston there and then to have this new one here, Dwayne Haskins, and it's just going to be similar, unfortunately, to the Ryan Fitzmagic and Jameis Winston of maybe this is our starter, maybe that's our starter. We're really not sure. I think it'd be too similar.
And then I'll ask you this. Oakland. Brandon threw out Oakland as his kind of dream situation for Dwayne Haskins. My only thing with Oakland is, A, they're trying to lose games. B, Derek Carr, unless you can get a trade for Derek Carr's locked up for I think it's 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, they have Derek Carr right now, but I do think a team would trade for him. I don't think there'd be a problem getting rid of Derek Carr if you wanted to. You'd get somebody to trade for him, and I've said before that I think Derek Carr should be a little bit worried for his longevity there, just because Oakland and John Gruden have gone into this with this mentality of, I don't care who you are.
I got 10 years.
Yeah, I got 10 years. I will do whatever it takes to get the perfect team.
Which, by the way, best joke I heard today, Poppy on Highly Questionable was like, oh, John Gruden makes all the moves. He's calling all the shots. Well, the first thing he should do is, I deserve another 10 years, 10-year extension.
There you go.
I won a couple games, 10-year extension.
Because now he's only got 9 years.
Yeah.
So time's coming up pretty fast.
He'd have 19 years if he gave himself a 10-year extension.
I think here's your dream scenario for the Raiders. You package a couple of those first-round picks. You get Le'Veon Bell on the team. Or
just don't forget, you got the Bears
or Antonio Brown
next year, too.
Yeah. Maybe you get Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. That'd be a dream scenario, right? Then you can go ahead and draft Dwayne Haskins, and look, you got a dream team.
Yeah.
Just don't use the word dream team. It doesn't work out for you.
I will ask you this, because what I told Brandon, because we kind of talked quarterbacks, is for me there's 7 teams that could go quarterback. The Giants, the Jaguars, the Broncos, the Redskins, the Dolphins.
I think you missed the Buccaneers.
The Buccaneers.
You might not have said the Raiders. The Raiders.
And the Raiders. Those would be the 7 teams. Maybe at 19, the Titans. Maybe if they're thinking about what you always say, where
he's just not healthy.
Biggest supporter of Marcus Mariota because he has not been healthy. Maybe then that is 8 that you're looking at. I will ask you this because this will be kind of a tease for next week, because next week we're going to, in our mock, one of the things we will ask is, should the Cardinals trade out of number
down.
1? I'm going to flip the question this week, though, for fits. So let's say you're the Giants. Best fit that you think is the Giants for Dwayne Haskins.
Yep.
Do you wait at 6 for him, or do you go up and take your guy at number 1? Kind of do what the Bears did.
I would wait. And the reason I would wait is because and I know that I'm not a person who says this, but a lot of people always say next year's a better draft class for quarterbacks. So I'm all right if I get to sit here and not get my quarterback this year because I got Eli Manning. Eli Manning's good enough for one more year, and my fans aren't going to crucify me for keeping Eli Manning for one more year because Eli Manning has earned the respect of New York.
Especially if I can get a guy like Jonah Williams that maybe lessens that 42 sacks that he took this year.
For sure. So I'm okay with that. I don't think I would trade up. I'd be willing to sit and hope that he falls down to me because I know there's quite a few teams that do potentially need quarterbacks, but it's not like there's really only 2 teams that desperately need a quarterback right now. And one of them is probably going to end up with Joe Flacco.
Well, yeah, that's another thing too. I'll ask you what I asked Brandon. If you're a GM, and I know this changes from team to team, but just your general thought of it.
Yeah.
if you're a team that needs a quarterback, would you lean more with trading up for trading up for Dwayne Haskins, or saying, you know what, the price might be less if I go and get a Joe Flacco and Nick Foles?
I think I would go for one of the veterans. Trading up for a quarterback, that's your job right there. If it doesn't work out, you're gone. So I think I would try and go for either try and trade for a Joe Flacco or just sign Nick Foles. He's going to be available this year.
Well, Nick Foles, I looked at it because I was listening to like sports talk, and I'm like, they're talking like he has another year. Apparently, there is Spot Rack has it as in 2019, it's a mutual $20 million base salary with the $600,000 signing bonus for 2019. So it looks like the Eagles will have him another year, and teams will have to trade for Nick Foles.
Well, if it's mutual, then he can get out of it, right?
There's a potential out, but I think I wonder if it's he can back out or if the team has to get rid of him.
I assume that if it was, and we'd have to look at it for sure, and we're not going to do that on the podcast because it'd be boring. But I would assume that a mutual would mean both have to agree to continue. So if Nick Foles says, I'm not continuing, he's gone.
So right here it says, that's it. Eagles must exercise option 1 week after the Super Bowl. Foles has 5 days after Eagles' decision to exercise. If he declines, he must pay back $2 million of his 2018 bonus.
Which, if he continues to do at least decently in these playoffs, Super Bowl or not, doesn't matter, he's going to make a lot more than $2 million. That's for sure.
So, but here's the thing, and this plays into it as well, and I know this is away from Dwayne Haskins, but I'll bring it up anyways, because it goes into that conversation. Here's another point to it. The 2019 salary, that $20 million, is fully guaranteed on May 18th. So what? You take that, if the Eagles say, yes, we want you, you say, yes, I want to be back, then what, a month, you wait a month and boom, it's fully guaranteed. That might be hard to walk away from if you're Nick Foles.
Well, more than a month.
A little over a month. It would be February
From
to
February
March.
to May?
To March.
Oh, I thought you said May.
No, sorry. March 18th of 2019.
Okay.
You wait a month and it's fully guaranteed.
But if you've now taken this team into the playoffs 2 years in a row, you're really going to go back to the bench. I know that $20 million. But if you're a starting quarterback, you're probably going to make $20 million.
Is he, though?
And
or is he going to take a discount? Will he have to take a discount?
I doubt it. The man's a Super Bowl MVP. He's not taking a discount.
Let's see. Case Keenum.
And he's tied for a record with Peyton Manning for most touchdowns in a game.
Just to throw it into consideration is Case Keenum in his 2 years, $8 million this year, $18 million next year. So, I mean, there's a possibility that if he signs a 2-year, one of the years could be closer to that $20 million. But it all depends on
Case Keenum, Super Bowl MVP. I don't know.
Could be 2 Super Bowl MVPs if he's
totally
brings
possible.
them back this year. But any other final things that you think we haven't mentioned with Dwayne Haskins and fits for him?
We talked about all the teams and all the fits. Is
there a dark horse that we're not thinking of? Maybe someone out of the 7 that are like, boom, we're going to take a quarterback that no one expected us to take a quarterback.
No. I mean, there's 7 teams who we just listed that might take him. It's going to be one of those 7.
True. I mean, the one that Brandon brought up for next year was the Vikings, where if Kirk Cousins doesn't work out again this next year.
Sure, but Dwayne Haskins not going to be there. So.
No, I know. But, that's one where I even think,
you just want to talk about the Vikings.
I wouldn't push that button if I was but I'm also a Kirk Cousins sympathizer after this year, where I think he's getting
he just wants to talk about Kirk Cousins. That's all this is.
Too much hate for a season that might not have been his entire fault. But anything that you think about for this best fits for Dwayne Haskins, where do you think he should go, where he should be drafted? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section.